Have you ever walked into a Japanese home and thought, how does this place feel so much bigger than it actually is? That's what surprises a lot of people. Many homes in Japan are relatively compact. The kitchens can be narrow. The closets are often smaller than what many Americans are used to. There may not be a huge laundry room, a walk-in pantry, or an oversized garage where everything can disappear. And yet, somehow, the home still feels calm. The countertops are mostly clear. You open a drawer, and you can actually see what's inside. The kitchen seems to use every inch without feeling crowded. Even those strange little gaps between a refrigerator and a wall, or between a washing machine and a cabinet, often have a purpose. I used to think the explanation was simple. Maybe Japanese families just owned fewer things, or maybe they were constantly cleaning and reorganizing. But the more you look at how these homes actually work, the more you realize that's not the whole story. The real difference is often the system. A well-organized Japanese home doesn't necessarily have more storage. It simply wastes less of the storage it already has. Drawers are designed so things don't disappear underneath each other. Cabinets use vertical space instead of leaving half of it empty. Everyday items are stored close to where they're actually used, and small spaces that most of us would ignore are often turned into useful storage. That may sound like a minor difference, but it changes how the entire home feels. Because clutter usually doesn't begin with having too little space. It begins with friction. You take something out, but putting it back is inconvenient. You buy another package of food because the first one is buried in the back of the freezer. You leave something on the counter because opening the cabinet and moving 5 other things is too much trouble. And slowly, those tiny moments start turning into clutter. That's what makes Japanese organization so interesting. It's less about finding more space and more about removing those little points of friction from everyday life. In this video, I'm going to show you 12 simple organization systems commonly associated with Japanese homes and storage design. Some cost almost nothing. Some use products you may already recognize. And several can be copied tonight without remodeling a single room. But as we go through them, pay attention to something bigger than the organizers themselves, because by the end, I think you'll see that the real secret may not be storage at all. It's designing your home so that putting things away, finding what you need, and keeping spaces clear all become a little easier. And once that starts happening, even a small home can feel surprisingly spacious. Let's start with one of the simplest systems of all. Make everything visible. Vertical folding. Let's start with something simple. Open a typical dresser drawer, and you'll probably see stacks of clothes, t-shirts on top of t-shirts, jeans folded underneath, socks tucked somewhere in the corner. It looks organized at first, but then you need the shirt at the bottom. So you lift one stack, pull out another shirt, knock something over, and 5 minutes later, the drawer doesn't look organized anymore. That's one reason vertical folding works so well. Instead of stacking clothes on top of each other, you fold each item into a compact rectangle and stand it upright, almost like files in a filing cabinet. T-shirts can stand side by side. Jeans can be folded the same way. You can do it with socks, towels, workout clothes, pajamas, and even children's clothes. The big difference is visibility. The moment you open the drawer, you can see almost everything you own in that category. You don't have to dig. You don't have to lift a pile just to reach one item. And when you remove one shirt, the rest of the drawer stays in place. That alone makes the system easier to maintain. But I think there's another benefit that people sometimes overlook. Vertical folding doesn't just save drawer space. It reduces decision friction. When clothes are stacked, we naturally keep choosing the things we can see. The shirt on top gets worn again, the one underneath gets forgotten, and the shirt at the bottom can sit there for months. I've done this myself. You clean out a drawer one day and find something you actually like, and your first thought is, I forgot I even owned this. That's not really a clothing problem, it's a visibility problem. When everything stands upright, more of your wardrobe gets a chance to be seen and used. And your morning becomes a little easier because you're not searching through piles or trying to remember what's hidden underneath them. That's a small thing, but small decisions add up, especially when you're making them every single morning. And here's the part I like most about this system. You don't need to reorganize your entire closet to test it. Tonight, try it with just one drawer. Pick your t-shirts, fold them vertically, stand them side by side. Then open that drawer tomorrow morning and notice how different it feels. If it works for you, move on to the next drawer. If it doesn't, you've only spent a few minutes experimenting. That's the kind of organizing system worth trying. Simple, visible, easy to maintain. Because good organization doesn't just save space, it saves decisions. Give every object an address. Drawer dividers. Now, let's talk about one of the smallest changes that can make a surprisingly big difference. Drawer dividers. At first, they don't seem very exciting. They're just little boxes, trays, or plastic separators. But they solve one of the most common problems in an organized home. Too many different things sharing one big space. Think about a typical drawer. You might have socks, underwear, belts, charging cables, watches, and a few random things you didn't know where else to put. At first, everything fits. Then you open and close the drawer a few dozen times. Things slide around. Cables get tangled. Small items disappear underneath larger ones, and eventually, the whole drawer becomes one big pile again. Drawer dividers change that by turning one large space into several smaller zones. One section for socks, one for underwear, one for belts, one for cables or accessories. And this idea works almost anywhere in the house. In the kitchen, you can separate chopsticks, spoons, peelers, scissors, and measuring tools. In the bathroom, you can create small sections for skincare, cosmetics, razors, or hair accessories. You don't need expensive organizers either. Simple plastic trays work. Small boxes work. Sometimes even containers you already have around the house are enough. The important part isn't what the divider looks like. It's that every category has a place. And that leads to one of the most useful organizing principles I've learned. If an item has no home, it eventually becomes clutter. Think about the things that always end up on your kitchen counter, or the chair in your bedroom, or that one corner where random objects seem to collect. A lot of the time, those things aren't there because someone is lazy. They're there because when the person finished using them, there was no obvious answer to one simple question: where does this go? And when that answer isn't clear, the easiest option is usually to leave the item where it is. That's how clutter starts. Not always with too many possessions. Sometimes it starts with too many objects that don't have an address. A good organizing system removes that little moment of hesitation. You use something, you finish with it. And without thinking very much, your hand already knows where to put it back. That's why drawer dividers can be more useful than they look. They don't just make a drawer prettier, they create boundaries. And boundaries make decisions easier. If you want to try this, don't buy organizers for your whole house. Start with the messiest drawer you use every day. Take everything out. Group similar items together. Then create a simple section for each group. You may find that the problem was never the drawer itself. The problem was that too many things were living there without a clear place to belong. And that's the real lesson here. The best organizing systems don't demand more discipline. They make the correct action obvious. Stop thinking wider. Use height, and dead space. Here's something I've noticed in a lot of small homes. When people run out of storage, the first thought is usually, I need a bigger cabinet. But bigger usually means wider. And wider furniture takes up more floor space, which can make a small room feel even smaller. Japanese storage often approaches the problem differently. Instead of asking how much wider a cabinet can be, it asks how much height is still being wasted. That's where tall, slim drawer cabinets come in. They're narrow enough to fit into places most people would normally ignore, beside a washing machine, between a wardrobe and the wall, next to a refrigerator, or tucked into a narrow corner where a standard cabinet simply wouldn't fit. At first, these cabinets can look almost too small to be useful, but that's exactly the point. They don't need a lot of floor space. They use height instead. And because the drawers are usually fairly shallow, things are less likely to disappear underneath each other. One drawer can hold towels, another can hold cleaning supplies, another might be for batteries, chargers, or small household items. The storage becomes more specific, and the footprint stays small. You can see the same idea inside kitchen cabinets. Open a cabinet and look above your plates or bowls. There's often a surprising amount of empty space sitting right there. You have one stack of dishes on the bottom, and then maybe 8 or 10 inches of nothing above it. That's where shelf risers are useful. A shelf riser creates a second level inside the cabinet. Now the plates can stay below, while bowls sit above. Or mugs can go on one level and food containers on another. You're not adding a new cabinet. You're simply using more of the cabinet you already have. And this is where I think the idea gets really useful. A surprising amount of storage space isn't hidden behind walls. It's simply unused air. We tend to notice empty floor space because it's easy to see, but we often ignore the space above things, the gap between a washing machine and a shelf, the empty space above a stack of plates, the narrow strip beside a refrigerator, the upper half of a deep cabinet that never gets used. That space is already part of your home. You're already paying for it. You're just not using it. So, before you buy another piece of furniture, try looking for 3 kinds of dead space. First, narrow gaps. Second, empty space above the things you already store. And third, unused vertical space inside cabinets or closets. You may be surprised by how much room is hiding in plain sight, and once you start seeing space this way, your question changes. Instead of asking, where can I put another cabinet? You start asking, what space am I already paying for but not using? That's a very different way to organize a home. And in a small space, it can make a much bigger difference than buying something larger. Store vertically. When stacking creates work, here's a simple rule that can make a lot of storage problems easier to solve. If you regularly have to lift 3 things just to reach the 4th, those items probably shouldn't be stacked. You can see this problem very clearly in the freezer. Most freezers start out looking organized. A bag of vegetables goes in, then some frozen chicken, then a box of dumplings, then leftovers. A few weeks later, everything is lying on top of everything else, and suddenly, finding one bag of frozen peas turns into a small excavation project. You move the meat, you lift a container, you check underneath something else, and half the time, you discover food you forgot you even bought. That's why vertical freezer storage works so well. Instead of laying bags flat in piles, stand them upright inside bins or narrow baskets. Think of it like a filing cabinet. Frozen vegetables in one section, meat in another, seafood somewhere else, prepared meals in their own bin. The important part is that the packages stay upright and the labels stay visible. Now, when you open the freezer, you can actually see what you have. You're not searching through layers, you're choosing from what's right in front of you. And there's one small habit that makes this system even better. When you buy new food, put it toward the back. Move older items toward the front. That way, the things that need to be used first are also the easiest to reach. It's a simple form of rotation, but it can make a real difference. Because visibility helps you remember what you own, and rotation helps you use it before it gets forgotten. Visibility plus rotation means less food waste. And the same basic idea works outside the freezer. Take file holders. They were designed for paperwork, but in the kitchen, they're surprisingly useful. Instead of stacking cutting boards on top of each other, stand them upright. Do the same with baking trays, pot lids, foil, parchment paper, reusable storage bags, even thin serving trays. Now each item has its own slot. You can pull out the one you need without disturbing the rest, and when you're done, it slides right back into place. That may sound like a tiny improvement, but think about how many times a day we avoid putting something away simply because it's annoying to reach the correct spot. If storing an item means lifting a heavy stack, moving 3 other things, and then rebuilding the pile afterward, sooner or later you're going to leave it somewhere easier. That's friction. And friction is what good organization tries to remove. So, the next time you open a cabinet, freezer, or pantry, look for stacks. Then ask yourself one question. Do these things really need to be on top of each other? Because sometimes you don't need more storage. You simply need to stop hiding things underneath other things. Good storage must be easy to reach. Deep cabinets look great when they're empty. They seem spacious. They seem practical. You look at all that room and think, perfect. I can fit everything in here. And technically, you can. The problem starts a few weeks later. The things you use every day stay near the front. The things you use occasionally get pushed farther back. Then something else goes in front of them. Then something else. And before long, the back half of the cabinet becomes a place where things quietly disappear. You know they're in there somewhere. You just don't want to deal with reaching them. I've seen this happen with almost everything. Cooking oil, mixing bowls, small appliances, cleaning products, pantry items, even pots and food containers. The cabinet may be full of useful things, but if getting one of them means kneeling down, moving 5 other items, and reaching into a dark corner, that storage isn't working very hard for you. That's where pull-out storage trays make such a difference. Instead of reaching into the cabinet, you bring the cabinet toward you. You pull the tray forward, and suddenly everything that used to be hidden in the back is right in front of you. The bottle of oil, the blender, the cleaning spray, the stack of bowls. Nothing has to disappear behind something else. And when you're done, the whole tray slides back into place. It's a simple change, but it fixes one of the biggest problems with deep storage. Access. Because capacity is only half of good storage. Accessibility is the other half. A cabinet might hold 20 items, but if the 10 items in the back are annoying to reach, you'll probably keep using the same few things near the front. You may even forget what's back there, and that can lead to another problem. Duplicates. You buy another bottle of cleaner because you didn't see the first one. You buy another bag of rice because the old one was hidden behind something. You replace an appliance you rarely use because you forgot where you stored it. The problem isn't that the cabinet is too small. The problem is that part of the cabinet has become invisible in daily life. That's why I think this is a useful way to judge storage in your own home. Don't just ask, how much can this cabinet hold? Ask, how easily can I reach what's inside? If the answer is, I have to move half the cabinet first, then that space probably needs a better system. Maybe it's a pull-out tray. Maybe it's a sliding basket. Maybe it's simply moving the things you use most often closer to the front. The exact solution can change. The principle doesn't. Storage you hate reaching into is barely useful storage. Because good organization isn't about squeezing the maximum number of things into a cabinet. It's about making the things you own easy to find, easy to reach, and easy to put back. Part 7. Take storage off the countertop. Here's something that can make a kitchen feel bigger almost immediately. Clear the countertop. Not completely, you still need the things you use every day, but the fewer objects sitting on the counter, the calmer the whole kitchen tends to feel. That's one reason vertical storage is so useful in many Japanese kitchens. Instead of keeping every spice bottle, cooking tool, and small container on the countertop, frequently used items are often moved onto vertical surfaces, the side of the refrigerator, a metal rail near the stove, a small rack on the wall, a magnetic surface, or even the space underneath an upper cabinet. Salt can stay near the stove, pepper can stay beside it. Cooking oil, seasonings, or small utensils can be kept close to where they're actually used without taking over the work surface. And that last part matters. Because a countertop isn't just storage, it's working space. It's where you prepare vegetables, where you make coffee, where you set down groceries, where you plate food. So every object that permanently lives there takes away a little bit of that space. But there's another reason I like this idea. It makes cleaning easier. Think about what happens when you wipe down a crowded counter. You pick up one bottle, wipe underneath it, move another container, clean around it, put everything back. Then repeat the same thing with the next object. One or two items may not matter much. But if you have 10 things sitting on the counter, a simple wipe down suddenly involves dozens of little movements, and those movements create friction. The more annoying a surface is to clean, the easier it becomes to put cleaning off until later. That's why a mostly clear countertop tends to stay cleaner. You can wipe it down in seconds. There's less to move, less to clean around, less chance for crumbs, grease, or dust to collect underneath things. And visually, the space feels bigger too. A small kitchen with clear work surfaces often feels more open than a larger kitchen covered with appliances, bottles, and containers. The square footage hasn't changed, but the visual noise has. So, if your kitchen feels crowded, you may not need to remove everything. Start with the things you use often, but don't actually need sitting on the counter. Could the spices move to the side of the refrigerator? Could cooking tools hang from a rail? Could a small rack go under a cabinet? Could something that takes up horizontal space be moved onto a vertical surface instead? The goal isn't to make the kitchen look empty. The goal is to keep the things you need close while protecting the surface you actually work on. Because the easier a surface is to clean, the more likely it is to stay clean. And when a kitchen is easier to maintain, it usually feels calmer, cleaner, and more spacious without adding a single extra inch. Part 8. Compress space without creating more clutter. Closets have a strange way of filling themselves. You start with a little extra room. Then a few new shirts come in, a couple of pairs of pants, maybe some seasonal clothes, and before long, every inch of the hanging rail is packed. That's where multi-layer hangers can be surprisingly useful. Instead of using one hanger for one pair of pants, a multi-layer hanger can hold several. Some models hang vertically, others swing sideways, and they can be used for more than just trousers. Scarves, ties, belts, lightweight clothing, even a few small towels. The idea is simple. You take several items that would normally spread across the closet rail and stack them vertically instead. That immediately frees up horizontal space, and in a small closet, that can make a big difference. Suddenly, clothes aren't pressed tightly against each other. You can see what you own more easily. You can move hangers without fighting for space, and the closet starts to feel like it can breathe again. But this is where I think we need to be careful, because space-saving tools can create a very tempting illusion. You save 12 inches of closet space. Then you think, great, now I can fit more clothes. And a few weeks later, the closet is full again. Nothing really changed. You didn't solve the problem. You just created room for more of the same problem. I've seen this happen with storage boxes, shelf risers, vacuum bags, and closet organizers too. The tool works, but instead of using the extra space to make the home easier to live in, we immediately fill it. That's why I think the goal should be different. When a space-saving tool gives you extra room, try not to treat that space as empty capacity that needs to be filled. Treat it as breathing room. A little space between clothes makes it easier to see them, easier to take one out, easier to put it back, and easier to notice when you already have enough. That last part matters, because an organized closet doesn't have to use every inch. In fact, some of the easiest closets to maintain have a little unused space on purpose. So if you try multi-layer hangers, don't judge them only by how many extra items they allow you to fit. Ask a better question. Does this make my closet easier to use? If the answer is yes, then the system is doing its job. If the answer is simply, now I can squeeze in 10 more things, then you may be heading right back to where you started. Space-saving tools work best when they create breathing room, not when they help us keep more things. Because sometimes the best use of extra space is to leave some of it empty. Part 9. Create visual calm, but organize before you buy. There's a reason some shelves look calm even when they're completely full. A lot of it comes down to consistency. When storage bins are the same general shape, similar in color, and designed to stack together, the whole space feels quieter. Your eyes aren't jumping from a red basket to a clear box to a blue container to something with a completely different lid. Everything starts to feel like part of one system. That's one reason matching storage bins are so common in organized Japanese homes. They may be used in kitchen cabinets, bathroom shelves, closets, laundry areas, children's storage, pantries. And because the sizes are often designed to work together, the containers can be moved from one room to another as needs change. That flexibility is useful, but there's something important I'd add here. Matching bins can make a space look organized even when it really isn't. You can take a pile of random things, put them into beautiful, identical boxes, line those boxes up on a shelf, and suddenly the room looks much better. But if you still don't know what's inside those boxes, or why those things are there in the first place, you haven't really solved the problem. You've just hidden it. That's why I think the order matters. Organize first, buy containers second. Start by sorting what you have. Then remove what you no longer use. Group similar things together. Decide where those categories should live. And only then ask whether a container would actually make that system easier to maintain. That one change can save you a surprising amount of money. Because sometimes, after you sort and remove what you don't need, you realize you don't need 3 new storage bins. You may not need any. Now, clear containers solve a slightly different problem. They help with visibility. In a pantry, a clear container lets you see how much rice, pasta, flour, cereal, or beans you have left without opening anything. That means fewer surprises. You're less likely to start cooking and realize you're almost out. And you're less likely to buy a second bag of something that was already sitting in the back. Labels make the system even easier. But I wouldn't label everything just for the sake of labeling it. A label is most useful when it removes uncertainty. For example, when several people in the house use the same storage area, when 2 ingredients look similar, when something needs to be refilled regularly, or when freezer bins are divided into categories like meat, vegetables, seafood, and prepared meals. In those situations, a label answers a simple question instantly: what goes here? And that helps the whole household put things back in the same place. That's the real value. A good label isn't decoration, it's an instruction. And when matching bins, clear containers, and simple labels all work together, the result is more than a shelf that looks good. You can see what you have, you know where things belong. You can tell when something is running low, and putting things away takes less thought. That's what creates visual calm that actually lasts. Not just prettier containers, a better system inside them. Turn tiny gaps into a low-friction home. Let's finish with one of those ideas that looks almost too simple to matter. The slim rolling storage cart. You've probably seen one before. It's narrow, it doesn't look like it can hold very much. And yet, in the right place, it can turn a completely useless gap into some of the hardest working storage in the house. Think about the narrow space beside a refrigerator, the gap next to a washing machine, or that awkward strip between a cabinet and the wall. Most of us look at those spaces and think, nothing really fits there, but a slim rolling cart changes that. You pull it out, and suddenly that tiny gap can hold canned food, cooking oil, detergent, paper products, cleaning supplies, or other small household items. Then, when you're finished, the whole cart slides right back out of sight. No extra cabinet, no major renovation, no extra room required. You're simply putting an overlooked space to work. But I think the more interesting idea here is not the cart itself. It's where the cart goes. In a lot of practical Japanese organization, storage is placed close to the activity it supports. Laundry detergent stays near the washing machine. Cooking ingredients stay near the area where food is prepared. Cleaning supplies stay near the places where they're actually used. That sounds obvious, but a lot of homes are organized the other way around. We create one big storage area, put everything there, and then walk back and forth every time we need something. The result is extra movement, extra steps, and one more reason to leave something out instead of putting it away. That's why I like the idea of small storage zones. You could think of them as micro storage zones, not one huge place where everything has to live. Just small amounts of storage placed close to where life actually happens. A few cleaning supplies near the bathroom, laundry products beside the washer, coffee supplies near the coffee maker, cooking tools within easy reach of the stove. When storage supports the activity, the whole routine becomes easier. And when something is easier, you're more likely to keep doing it. Looking back at all 12 systems in this video, there's really a pattern underneath them. They may look like different products and different tricks, but most of them are doing the same 5 things. First, see it. If you can't see what you own, there's a good chance you'll forget it. That's why vertical folding, clear containers, and upright freezer storage work so well. Second, reach it. Storage only helps when the things inside are easy to access. That's why pull-out trays and vertical storage make such a difference. Third, give it a home. Every item you use regularly needs an obvious place to return to. If you have to stop and wonder where something belongs every time you put it away, the system probably won't last. Fourth, use dead space. Look up. Look between things. Look inside the empty part of a cabinet. Some of the most useful storage in a home is already there. It just hasn't been used yet. And fifth, reduce friction. This may be the most important one. The easier it is to put something away, the more likely you are to actually put it away. The easier it is to see what you own, the less likely you are to buy duplicates. And the easier a surface is to clean, the more likely it is to stay clean. That's really the lesson behind all of this. The goal isn't to fit more things into your home. It's to make your home require less effort from you. And you don't need to copy all 12 ideas. In fact, I wouldn't. Start with one place in your home that annoys you every single day. Maybe it's the drawer you can never find anything in. the freezer where food disappears, the cabinet where everything gets buried in the back, or the kitchen counter that never seems to stay clear. Fix that one place first. Make it easier to see, easier to reach, easier to put things back, then move on to the next problem. That's how a home starts to feel lighter, not through one huge organizing weekend, but through small systems that quietly make everyday life easier. So, I'm curious, which of these Japanese organization systems would make the biggest difference in your home? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy practical ideas from Japanese homes that make everyday life simpler, calmer, and easier to maintain, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.